Good evening. I just want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Justin Pope. I want to also take a moment to apologize for the lighting conditions and the lack of an audience, and the fact if the radio goes off at any point in time during this speech. I do apologize, and I hope that my voice trumps that of the sound of the radio. Tonight I'll be talking about and giving information on battlefield trauma and the way to treat it. Battlefield trauma is something that is never fun to come upon it, but it's something that when troops and soldiers like myself who were sent into combat, it's one of those things that's absolutely inevitable and you're going to run into it. Luckily, the Army prepares and teaches a process called March, and when faced with the rigors of treating a casualty under enemy fire, it provides guidelines and a baseline to provide life-saving treatment to a soldier or an airman or a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret, that life-saving procedure. During this presentation, I will go over what each letter means of the acronym and a little more in depth of what what you would do to treat for that specific acronym. The first acronym for March, well, the acronym itself, I should say, is March. And the first letter in March stands for massive hemorrhage. Massive hemorrhage is actually the number one life taker for battlefield trauma. A study was done around 2009, 2010 that in the early years of the Iraq War, if this specific guideline were to have been out, that upwards of 76% of lives possibly could have been saved if this were implemented. So the first letter in the acronym is March, massive hemorrhage. And basically what you'll do for the M in March is you'll take your hands and you'll start at the head and you'll do a dry sweep of the entire body, from the head, the neck, the back, the chest, the groin, the front of the thighs, the back of the thighs, the shins, the calves, the ankles, and the feet. The armpits, both biceps, forearms, and then obviously the hands. And what you're doing is you're taking your hands along the patient's body and you're looking for any visible signs of pain or the obvious blood on your hands. And if you do come across the blood, the first thing you have to do is stop the massive hemorrhage. The next thing you'll do is the A in March, which stands for airway control. So that's opening up an airway. So you have a device that's called an NPA, and it's just a tube that goes in through the nostril, goes down through the throat, and it bypasses the tongue, and it opens up a good permanent airway. If an NPA or something of that sort isn't able to be inserted, then what you'll have to do is you have to go in through the throat, and I wouldn't be able to do this as a CLS guy, but a medic or a Air Force pararescueman would actually go in and they would cut a crike and shove a tube into the lungs to provide air to that patient. The next would be respiratory, and that's basically just to make sure that that NPA that you put in is going to work and that it's going to maintain that airway so the patient continues to breathe. The next is going to be circulatory. That is basically making sure that the patient who is on the ground is still getting blood to the different areas that needs to get blood, because blood carries the oxygen and keeps everything alive. So you're going to check the circulatory, you're going to pinch the ends of fingers, and you're looking for discoloration underneath the fingernail and how long it goes from white back to red. And then the last thing that will be treated will be heat and head injury. So if in the hot summer months in Afghanistan, when you would likely run into a casualty, the big thing you want to make sure is that the patient is comfortable. So you're taking the plate carriers off, you're cutting clothes away, because the body is going through a lot. So you want to do what you can to stabilize that body, and you either want to A, circulate the heat, or B, cool that patient off. More likely than not, you're going to try to cool that patient off. And then obviously the head injury. Heat the H stands for both heat and head injury. So you're going to make sure that there's not any signs of battle signs underneath the bruising underneath the eyes or bruising behind the ears. And you want to make sure, as far as the bruising under the eyes and under the ears, you also want to make sure for an acronym called PEARL, which is for the eyes, and it's pupils equal, round, and reactive to light. So you want to make sure that the patient's pupils are equal, round, and reactive to light. That's pretty obvious. And then the next thing you'll check for the head injury is from the nose or the ears, and you're going to look for CSF, or cerebral spinal fluid. And you'll know it's cerebral spinal fluid because it distinctly smells like juicy fruit bubble gum. And so, in conclusion, the Army teaches acronyms like MARCH to help soldiers remember and know how to properly treat a casualty in order of importance when under enemy fire. Because remembering this method could mean the difference between life and death of your brothers. Thank you.